Week 7 provided some bangers in college football, and there's a lot of movement in my top 25. So let's go ahead and get into it. What's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up. Enjoy the content as always. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that nice, beautiful football discourse. Yes, I sound a bit hoarse. I kind of lost my voice after the Saturday live stream, and I'm recording this Sunday night, so I'm going to be taking it easy after this video. I got my humidifier right here. If you see a little smoke, that's what that is. But let's go ahead and get into it with my teams that just missed it, starting with Maryland. And honestly, after I did this, I feel like I shouldn't put Maryland on this list after Tagovailoa went down with a knee injury. It looks like it could be bad. I don't think he's going to be starting at least the next few games. So Maryland, despite the record, might not be long for a top 25 appearance. Central Florida, however, is playing some banger football. They're making a case why they are going to be the best team out of the AAC. They just blasted Temple this past week, 70-13. Plumlee's looking amazing this year. Liberty, they're an independent team. Their schedule gets a bit tougher as they'll have like BYU and Arkansas coming up, but they're 6-1. And their only loss of the season came in a very close match, or a very close game against Wake Forest. So they just missed it. They're on the cusp. LSU, man, finally the offense showed up. Granted, they almost gave it up late to Florida. They were able to hold on. Watch out for LSU. Maybe they make an appearance. Then Purdue, man. Purdue, their only losses of the season have come in close matchups against top 25 teams, Penn State and Syracuse. Now this week, let's see who they have. They actually have the week off this week, but don't be surprised if they sneak into that top 25. Going to my fallers, I got 4 of them this week. Kansas, the glass slippers off. I know this team still looked pretty good against returning Dylan Gabriel and Oklahoma, but I don't know. It's just good. It's just gonna get harder down the stretch for Kansas. So it was a nice ride while it lasted. Washington State, they faced a very good Beavers defense and couldn't really do much against it, losing that I believe 24-10. So they slip out. BYU, I always thought they were more pretender than contender, and that kind of came to fruition in the second half of that Arkansas game. So they fall out. Baylor in a very good shootout on last Thursday, I believe, against West Virginia, and they just came on the wrong end of that one. But they finally get bumped from my top 25. So let's go ahead, get into the top 25, starting with North Carolina State here at 25, and honestly, I think they're probably the next team to slip out. Devin Leary out for the season. That's a huge blow, a big hit. I just don't think it's good for NC State here. Tulane making its first appearance on my top 25 as they keep rolling. Keep in mind, this is a team that beat ranked 17 Kansas State, gave them their only loss of the season. Pratt's playing good football. They blasted South Florida this past week, and I believe this week they have Cincinnati has SMU. They have Memphis, so watch out for that game. That actually should be a whole lot of fun. North Carolina, it hasn't been pretty in recent weeks, but they managed to get the job done against Duke. We'll see how they do going forward. I believe they have the week off this week, but we'll see how legit they are in coming weeks as they get to face better competition. And Mays is playing great football. I get it. Mississippi State, they fell short against Kentucky. Had a rough outing against that good Kentucky defense. I think they haven't allowed more than 10 points this season. And to be fair, Mississippi State, they got to 17 because Emmanuel Forbes is a pick 6 nightmare waiting to happen. So rough loss for Mississippi State. And then they get Alabama this week. And they got to go to Tuscaloosa for that one. So another team that might not be long for the top 25 here. Texas, They get a win against, first off, let's pour a little out for Iowa State. Probably the best 4-loss team in college football. Iowa State, they have lost the past 4 games by a combined total of 14 points. So they're averaging losing by 3.5 points. That's rough, man. That's a really good defense there. Texas managed to get on top near the end of that game. They get Oklahoma State this weekend. So we'll see, man. They're Oklahoma State, they're reeling after a tough loss in OT against TCU. On to number 20, and it's Illinois, man. Illinois looking like a team that will contend, that will contend their division and go on to face winner of, let's call it, Michigan, Ohio State. That's what's gonna happen. So Illinois, man, I'm kind of curious if they can contend. They've been a very good squad this season with their only loss this year. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Here, hold up. Illinois, they are 6-1 now. Where they were just utterly in control of that game against Minnesota this past weekend. And only loss came against Indiana. That's right, that close one at the beginning of the year. And to be fair, their schedule isn't too bad outside of games against Purdue and Michigan near the end of the season. There's a good chance we're going to be seeing these guys battling for the Big Ten title. All right, on to Cincinnati, another team I kind of talked about with Tulane, where they lost their season opener against Arkansas, but they've been playing good football ever since. They get SMU this weekend. SMU, that's a solid squad. I believe they're 4-3, 3-3, but don't sleep on SMU. They got one of the best receivers, one of the best receiver quarterback combinations in the nation with Mordecai and Rice. Kentucky coming off a big win. Will Levis going down, coming back, and being able to seal the game for him. Outside of that pick six, he played for the most part mistake-free football, hit a few big plays off the play action, and really Chris Rodriguez has been a nightmare since coming back. He's been so good. So good on you, Kentucky, winning a tough one there. Kansas State, they had the week off. They move up. They get I believe, a tougher matchup this week as they face, obviously, TCU in Fort Worth. So Godspeed and good luck, Kansas State. Penn State, man, they looked really good in that first half, at least defensively. To be fair, against Michigan, they got up top on Michigan 14-13, and then Michigan took the lead and never looked back. But it was based on 2 big plays: the pick six off of the tipped ball and a 62-yard run by Sean Clifford. Outside of that, they weren't doing much of anything. And I kind of felt like I wasn't really buying into this Penn State team just yet. But, yeah, they lose. They get Minnesota this week, and good chance I think Minnesota won't have Tanner Morgan. He was carted off the field, I believe. And then number 15, Syracuse. This is the best Syracuse has looked and been in years. I'm loving this Syracuse team. They bopped a Devin Leary-less NC State, but things get a bit more serious this week as they have to go to Memorial Stadium and face off against the Clemson Tigers. So good luck, man. This is your game. Make the most of it. USC, man, they fall in a very close game. They end up losing Jordan Addison in the game, which just sucks. Honestly, Caleb Williams played a great game, but I love the call by Utah to go for the win rather than settling for the tie. They're at home. Sucks, USC. Let's see how this team bounces back after a very, very tough loss. I believe they get the week off this week. Yes, they get the week off this week, so they get to sit on this and figure out how can we bounce back, because by no means are they out of the race for the Pac-12. And then Utah, man, again, this is a 2-loss team that's better than what people think in the opener. They kind of lost to Florida with a little luck not on their side. I believe it was Washington. Was it Washington State that they went down to? Oh gosh, Utah. Who did you go down to? Here, let me just pull that up real quick. I want to say it was Washington State, but I'm not positive. It was UCLA. Duh. There we go. So they lost to UCLA, the current number 1 in the Pac-12. So, yeah, that's not bad at all. They get Washington, not this weekend, but next weekend. Washington State, excuse me. But they put themselves back in the race for the Pac-12 with that big victory this past weekend. Again, they took the big hit with Brant Kuthi going down, but they responded well, and Dalton Kincaid had the game of his life. And then Oklahoma State, man, going down in OT after controlling that game against TCU for so long, going down, heartbreaking. You get Texas at home, so let's see if they can rebound. The offense still looks very impressive there for Oklahoma State. And then UCLA, man, they're moving up slowly but surely. But they're looking good. They get, I believe they get Oregon. That's going to be our watch-along game this weekend. So check out that. Don't worry, Oregon's just a spot up here. But then they got to travel to Eugene. This is a big part of why I currently have Oregon ahead of UCLA, because it's going to be a tough game for UCLA, and they're not even entering as the favorites. I mean, it's a home game for Oregon, so. Good chance whoever wins this game is in the driver's seat of the Pac-12. Going to the top 10, Oregon here at 10. Didn't think they'd come anywhere close to this after just getting trounced by Georgia in the opener, but they have been great ever since. And they get the big matchup this week against UCLA. Wake Forest, man, they just, I just feel like they're this outside of Clemson, they're the best team in the ACC. Remember, they lost that game, I believe, was it double overtime? Maybe just one overtime. To Clemson, very tightly fought affair. They get Boston College this week. So you don't want to sleep on Boston College, but you can kind of sleep on Boston College. TCU, man, like 2 big wins, one after the other. And now they get Kansas State, another shot to knock off a contender there in the Big 12. So TCU, man, offense, and it's not like Max Duggan, man. He was slow out the gates, but man, this team played really good. They got great receivers. They got a really good run game, man. Watch out for TCU. Alabama, man, tough loss. They battled back after being down 21 early. And loss at the end on the field goal. By no means do I think this Alabama team's out of it, but they have to drop. They get Ole Miss this weekend, so that's why I have them behind. Or no, they get Ole Miss the following weekend, I believe, because they get Mississippi State this week while Ole Miss gets LSU. So I'm holding back Ole Miss. They're still undefeated. So that's why I got them above Alabama. Literally, Bryce Young, man. It's the Bryce Young show. Him and Jahmyr Gibbs are doing their best while not really having help around them. There were a ton of drops early in that game by the receivers for Bryce Young that really killed drives. So, and the defense just isn't here to play. So we'll see. I think they get past Mississippi State. I think Ole Miss can get past LSU, though I'm a little less sure on that game. But we might be seeing a big matchup there between Ole Miss and Alabama. Ole Miss, man, they got up early against Auburn, and then they let Auburn back in it. The defense, especially the run defense, doesn't look all that great. But we know this offense could put up a lot of points in a very little amount of time. So you're still undefeated. That's why you're here at 6. Number 5, Clemson Tigers. Still contemplating putting them ahead of Michigan. But as I said in my live stream, if Michigan couldn't cover the 6.5, then I would put Clemson ahead of them. They covered it. They covered it pretty easily in that second half. But Clemson, it may have been looked a little closer than it actually was against Florida State, because Florida State did bring pretty close this past weekend. But Clemson now kind of gets to, if they can knock off Syracuse, they're kind of in the driver's seat of the ACC at that point. So Yeah, playing great football. DJ Uyunglele really not being talked about a lot. He really should, man. This is a cat that's, you could argue, should be in the Heisman race. He might be. I don't know. We'll talk about my top 5 Heisman contenders after this. Michigan, they got rolling in the second half. Great. Still, man, I feel like that Ohio State might be the better squad, but we won't know until they go face off against one another. Keep in mind, when it comes to the college football playoff, only one of those teams gets to actually play for their conference title because they're both in the same division. So there's no way that an Ohio State and Michigan can make it this year, at least in my opinion. Tennessee moves up to 3. I basically moved them up to Alabama's spot. Now, they're in the same division as Georgia, which means they have to eventually take on Georgia, and that's going to be a hell of a game as they battle for who gets to go face, I guess, Ole Miss or Alabama for the SEC crown. They do get Kentucky the week before they go against Georgia, so that game, that's in 2 weeks, that Kentucky game as a potential upset if Tennessee gets caught looking ahead to Georgia. So I'm just going to call it right now. And then I have Ohio State. They had the week off. Good for them. They deserve it. Teams haven't been able to be competitive with them, not since the Notre Dame game. But even then, they were able to take it over in like the second half. But Ohio State, I think you could argue that they should be the top team. Should be the number 1 team in the country, at least on my list. And I wouldn't disagree with that. For me, it's like, it's them or Georgia. It's fine. Either way. Georgia, they smacked Vandy. I know they've had a few closer calls this year than Ohio State has, but I do think this is a really good Georgia squad. They bring back Stetson Bennett, who won them the national championship last year. So it's kind of hard to argue that they shouldn't be number 1 without at least it's hard to move them down when they're undefeated. It just is. So regardless, it doesn't matter. Both teams making the playoffs here if we were to end my top 25 today. Let's go ahead and get to my Heisman contenders, starting with Bryce Young. I'm keeping him on this list because he is he's the backbone to this Alabama team. He put up almost 500 yards to keep that team competitive in the game. He literally brought this team back on his back against Tennessee, man. He is Alabama. Like, you can't sleep on this guy in the Heisman race. This dude's just one hell of a football player. New member to the list here is Blake Corum. Had one hell of a day against Penn State. Both him and was it Anthony Edwards? The other back there. Lightning, let's just say that. So I wanted to finally get a non-quarterback up on this list because, man, I think you could have made a case here for guys like Dorian Thompson Robinson, DTR, to be up here in this chase. DJ Uyunglele, but I really want to highlight one of the non-quarterback players that are just playing great football. I believe Blake Corum leads college football in rushing yards right now, having a great year. Despite the loss, Caleb Williams still number 3 here on my list. 5 TDs in this game. He was a big part of why they were able to get that they were leading much of the way against Utah. And he had a hell of a game. And fortunately, they just came in on the short end of the stick when it was all said and done. But he's playing really good football. But I think no one comes close to my number 1 and number 2, as it's a bit of the same as last week. But I'm moving CJ Stroud down 1 spot. He didn't play this week, so it feels bad moving him down. But, I mean, my number 1, who is Hendon Hooker, literally had a career-defining game. Tennessee, they blew the lid off of Alabama, off the SEC in general. They're like, no, Georgia and Alabama aren't the only teams, aren't the only powerhouses here in the SEC. This wasn't just a career-defining victory for Hendon Hooker, but it was one for Tennessee. It was a changing of the guard. This was big. He came up big. 5 tutties, 56 rushing yards. Dude's playing great. I think he is the Heisman right now. I believe he is also the favorites, probably the favorite for the Heisman right now if you go look at Vegas's odds. But that's it for the video. Hopefully my voice is a lot better because I got a lot of recordings to do this week because the prospect rankings are coming out. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.